Hey guys, welcome back to Tech Goose. Today we're bringing you another unboxing video with some general knowledge about keyboards and their many applications. So if you want to find out more about keyboards in general and mechanical keyboards specifically, let us tell you what you need to know to get started. Just a quick disclaimer, we are not sponsored by any mentioned brands and are basing our information on our own knowledge as well as readily available info from the internet. So let's get started. To begin with, inside every keyboard there are switches underneath each keycap. Generally there are two main keyboard switches. We've got rubber dome switches and mechanical switches. The dome keyboard is what you'll most commonly find on laptops and cheaper keyboards for office applications, etc. Whereas mechanical keyboards tend to be used more often for applications in which response time is of a higher value. So in gaming, for example. Within these switch types, there are also different subtypes of switches. There's optical switches, for example, but that's a topic for another video, so we're going to move on. Moving on to mechanical keyboards. We have one right here. This is the HyperX Alloy FPS Pro. It's a 10 keyless mechanical keyboard that uses Cherry MX red switches, and we'll get to what that means in a second. Alrighty, so 10 keyless. This refers to the number of keys on a board. A standard board generally has 104 keys, depending on where you live, whereas this board and most smaller laptops have a 10 keyless form factor with about 87 keys. There's also 60% keyboards, and basically what happens is they cut this bit out, they've just got that much of the keyboard. 10 keyless refers to the numpad found usually on the right side of the letter keys. This keyboard doesn't have the numpad, ergo 10 keyless. Moving on, Cherry MX Red. What does this mean? Well, it's quite simple really. Cherry MX is the manufacturer of the switch, and red denotes which type of switch it is. So red switches have a linear feel when you press down on them, as opposed to something like a brown switch, which has a tactile bump in the travel of the key. So this means you will feel the bump when you press the key. There are also blue switches which have an audible click when you press the key, as well as the tactile bump found on the brown switches. The blue switches also tend to require a bit more force to actuate. There are also other types of switches like white and black switches, but the first three I mentioned are the most common ones. Alongside Cherry MX, there are also brands like Kale, Razer, Gigabyte, and a handful of other manufacturers that supply their own versions of these switches. Alright, moving on. The moment you've all been waiting for, the unboxing of this keyboard. Hopefully, we're all in the same boat when it comes to understanding what this keyboard is. Like I said, this keyboard uses Cherry MX red switches, and that's probably the most important thing to note here. The model also has red backlighting, which I find quite useful when using the keyboard in the dark. It just makes it easier to use. I've had backlit keyboards for years now, and I wouldn't move back to a non-backlit keyboard. Important to note, now taking it out of the package, the first impression I get is that it is quite heavy. The keyboard weighs 850 grams, if that tells you anything. I think this is a good thing because it means I won't accidentally move it when I'm using it. I've actually been a long-time exclusive laptop user, but have recently bought a PC, so this is definitely something I was concerned about, and I don't think it's going to be an issue with this keyboard. The quality actually feels really good in comparison to something like the Logitech G413 feels much better. The Alloy FPS Pro has ABS plastic keycaps, which feel pretty decent for the price. There's not too much wobble. There's a little bit, of course, as you'd expect, but the actuation is pretty even here on the space bar. Let's see what else we have in this package. So we've just got a quick start guide here. Put that aside. Bring it back here. Right, and this is where we'll find the cable. On one end we have the micro USB. There you go, and on the other end we just have normal USB type A. The backlight looks even, with some areas not as well lit as others, but you only really see that in the dark. It's barely noticeable unless you look at it very closely. There's nothing else in the box, it is just this cord and the keyboard. So that is it for our video today. Make sure to like, subscribe and comment down below if you have any input. We are trying to grow the channel a little bit, so any interaction you have with us is greatly appreciated. Until then, this is Tech Goose. See you in the next one.